Hey everyone, it is Friday, and that means it is time for my weekly MTG Top 10. This week we're looking at the top 10 cards I'm happiest they reprinted in Eternal Masters. This is a bit of a two-part series, as next week I will tackle the 10 cards I wish they'd reprinted in Eternal Masters, but let's start with the positive. Please note that unlike some of my other lists, this one is a bit less empirical. Actually, it's not empirical at all, and it's based purely on my own opinion and my own viewpoint. I will do my best to convey why I'm happy about certain cards being reprinted, but all of these opinions come from my own perspective, which is the perspective of someone who primarily plays, at least when it comes to Eternal formats, Modern and Commander, and as someone who's interested in getting into Pauper, and is interested in as well in making budget decks. So those point of views are what influence my ranking of these cards. And so, for example, I'm happy about cards that I think are overpriced that have been reprinted because most likely Eternal Masters will have at least some effect on the price of those cards, although I will qualify that by saying it will probably only be a short-term effect if Modern Masters is any indicator. So let's go ahead and get started. At number 10, I have Maelstrom Wanderer. For each of the cards this week, as you can see here, I will include information about the original printing of the card, how much the card costs right now. I include Maelstrom Wanderer on here purely from my interest in Commander. I myself am not actually a Maelstrom Wanderer player, but this elemental is one of the more popular commanders in the game, and up until now he has not been available as a foil. His printing in Eternal Masters means players who really want to pimp out their Maelstrom Wanderer deck will finally be able to make their commander foil, and that is certainly a bit of a victory for them. His price will probably also decrease a little bit, as this is the first time he's been printed in a set where there's actually booster packs. He's otherwise been in sort of, Plane Chase, Commander's Arsenal type things. But I do have a feeling that foil Maelstrom Wanderers will actually be in enough demand that they will be stupid expensive, and if you end up drafting one of these, I think holding on to it's probably your best option if you're using it as an investment, because it's probably not going to be printed as foil again, at least not for a very long time, and so it will be quite costly. So let's move on to number 9. At number 9, I have Nimble Mongoose, who is seeing his first reprint since 2001. What's more, his rarity has been shifted to common. That's a big deal if you play Pauper, and I think that Nimble Mongoose will likely make some waves there in the near future, along with Werebear and Moldgraph Scavenger, other powerful common creatures who like for cards to be in the graveyard. If I'm going to make a Pauper deck in the near future, it will probably be some sort of deck built around those creatures. The price on this card might change a little bit since the Mongoose is only a common, so I'm planning on picking up a play set of them around the height of Eternal Masters, where hopefully it will be quite cheap. So let's move to number 8, where we have Sensei's Divining Top. This card is an important card in legacy decks that run Miracles and Counterbalance, but it is also a Commander staple, and that's one thing I'd like to praise Wizards for in general, is they printed a lot of cards that are multi-format all-stars, which I think best embodies the whole idea of Eternal Masters in general, and Sensei's Divining Top is an example of that. In paper, it is stupid expensive for an uncommon. As you can see, it's almost $27. It was originally printed as an uncommon. While it was reprinted once in a From the Vault box set, its price hasn't decreased much because those From the Vault sets have pretty high MSRPs, and they try to keep the value of the cards up. And they did print it at rare this time, but I think the price for the card will go down at least a little bit in the wake of Eternal Masters. And if you see it dip below $20, I would advise grabbing one. I also like the new art quite a bit as well. So let's move on to number 7, where we have Young Pyromancer. He's actually made it on 2 of the last 3 MTG Top 10s I've done, so good for him. I'm happy they reprinted this guy for a few reasons. First, he's a key card in basically every Eternal format, Vintage, Modern, and Legacy, and he hasn't been printed for a few years, so a reprint was in order. Even though he was printed just a few years ago, his demand is so high that in paper he costs almost $3, and so reprinting him will help decrease the cost of that, making it easier for people to obtain him and get into Eternal formats. He will also be pretty fun to draft, especially when you know you can sell him for a couple bucks if you want to. And I think those are important things. And I think this is one of the best reprints by Wizards in general in this pack, because they didn't move him up to rare like they did some of their other multi-format all-stars like Sensei's Divining Top, but they left him at his original rarity of uncommon, meaning that there will be a lot of them floating around even in a limited print set like this one. So at number 6, I have 2 cards instead of 1, and they are Hydroblast and Pyroblast. I grouped them together for obvious reasons. They're sort of, they're part of a mini cycle, and they're very good cards for sideboards in a lot of formats, especially Eternal formats. One of the major reasons I like these cards, though, is that there's really sweet new art. The old ones had classic art, but I think that the updated art is more of what we're used to from Magic today. Additionally, this is the first time these 2 cards will be available in foil and paper, and that tends to get people pretty excited, including me. Finally, as you can see, these cards are crazy expensive for commons, which they originally printed as, only on Magic Online. In paper, they're not all that expensive. This is because neither 5th edition nor Ice Age was ever released in full on Magic Online, and as a result, the cards are only available from Masters Edition, which had an extremely short run on Magic Online. These two cards are important for Pauper players as they were powerful sideboard cards originally printed at Common. An increase in supply of these cards is needed on Magic Online, and the price for them should become reasonable enough for people to snag a few for their sideboards. So on to number 5. This is a card that hasn't seen print in paper since 1994, apart from a Judge promo. And what's more, Magic Online has only seen one limited printing of this card in Masters Editions 4, which was a Magic Online only set that had a very limited release. So supply of this card is extremely limited in both paper and online because it's only, the Dark is very old. There aren't that many Maze of Iths that probably survive in decent condition, and Masters Edition was only a small set. The Maze has a high price primarily by virtue of being a great card for Commander. As you can see, it costs $23 in paper and 20 tickets online. And it's a card that's a staple in Commander. It can go in any Commander deck, and it's good against most commanders, most opponents, rather. I mean, it does also stop commander damage. The reprinting of this card at Rare instead of Mythic, which wouldn't have surprised me at all because it's worth so much money, will likely decrease the price of the card a fair amount, perhaps more in paper since it has been so long since it's seen print there, and I'm pretty happy about that because grabbing them for commander decks would be great, so I hope they get considerably cheaper, although I may be a bit too optimistic there. So let's move on to number 4. At number 4, we have Daze, who hasn't been found in a booster pack in 16 years, although it was printed, as you can see, in a dual deck series. This card is in low supply and in fairly high demand. It sees play in Legacy, but it also sees play in Pauper, so it's another sort of multi-format all-star. Pauper is well supported on Magic Online, and Pauper staples are frequently more expensive on Magic Online, and Daze is no exception, where it costs more than three times as much as it costs in paper. Having to pay $36 for a playset of cards for your Pauper deck just seems wrong to me, and hopefully a reprint of Daze will help offset that a little bit, although too bad they didn't print it at Common, but I guess it may have been too good and limited for that. Wizards has another win here, though, by printing a multi-format all-star in high demand and low supply. So number 3, we have another multi-format all-star, and that is Rancor. It's probably not as much of a multi-format all-star as the others, but it does see play in Modern and in Pauper, and is another card that is definitely overcosted for an Uncommon, and it was even originally printed as a Common. Reprinting it at a reasonable rarity like Uncommon will undoubtedly make the card more affordable for people, and make those mono-green Stompy decks in Modern even more budget, and it will also make Pauper decks even more budget, which I think they're supposed to be deep down. The problem is, when cards are really in high demand, Pauper staples, they become Pauper staples, and then they become very expensive. So we'll move to number 2, and here we have another Commander staple, Sylvan Library. Every green deck in Commander wishes they had Sylvan Library, but it is prohibitively expensive in paper. While one reprint of it is around $25, the 4th edition version, it has a white border, and people aren't especially interested in it, and the copies that people really want who are seeking to pimp out their Commander decks cost, closer to $100. It has also never been available as a foil in paper, but now it is, something else Commander players love. Sylvan Library is actually very cheap on Magic Online, despite being highly sought after, but this is because of the fact that it was printed in Vintage Masters, an MTG-only set. Hopefully, a printing in Eternal Masters will have a similar impact on the paper price, although I think expecting it to dip below $1 is probably a little much, but maybe it'll get down to $15, $10, and I would like that quite a bit. So let's move on to our number 1 pick. And we actually have multiple cards here, but they all go together for being important Commander staples, seeing play in internal formats, and being expensive. And they also have similar effects. They're all tutors. They're all 1-mana tutors, all cards that every Commander deck wants, and all 3 of them also see play in formats like Legacy and Vintage. Vampiric Tutor is the most expensive at around $30 right now. Enlightened Tutor is around $15, and Mystical Tutor is the cheapest at about $7. These cards have also never been able to be obtained in foil before in paper, so it gives collectors another great opportunity. And I think they did a great job printing a lot of cards that have never been foil before in paper because they know people love that. They know it'll sell packs, but it's also fan service. People actually do want that, even though and Wizards is doing it to make money, but they're also doing it because they know their fans want it. And hopefully these reprintings, especially of Enlightened Tutor and Mystical Tutor, will make them a bit cheaper. Vampiric Tutor is unfortunately a mythic, so it may not have a huge impact. And the foils of these are some other foils that holding on to them is probably a good investment because over time, people are really going to want them for their Commander decks. So that does it for this week's MTG Top 10. What do you think of this list? Is there a card you're happy they printed in Eternal Masters that I didn't talk about? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you want to make sure you don't miss any MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.